decided to use MongoDB in this project, and I use the Mongoose library inside of my Next.js project. Um, my data structure is composed of two documents. One I call app users, where I define the user taking the ID uh, of its ID in the Clerk authenticator, its email, and some other values that there's two other values that are related with the business logic. Then I will show this later. Also, it has the created and updated date. In the money transactions, has more information, the one ID, the ID of the user, in the authenticator platform, an origin, that is basically this transaction entity, that could be USD, loans, payments, etc. Everything related with the business logic, the type, that could be credit or debit, a value, and some optional values like interest details created and updated at. My data abstraction layer is composed of three parts. The first one would be this part that connects, there's a function that uses Mongoose to connect with the database and provide this path to communicate other functions with the database. Second, the models. And these models basically define documents and use Mongoose too. With that, you can use this object you can call functions using these objects. And with that, you can interact with the database. And that leads up to the third part of the data abstraction layer, which is these functions that I called REPL functions. And I call it REPL functions because they are functions that use the connection with Mongo that we created before, with the models that we also created, to communicate with the database, creating or finding or updating data. So these three parts combined made the data abstraction layer of my project. Finally, my APIs routes, they are not explicitly defined as traditional APIs. And that happens because I could do that. Next, allow me to do that. Anything that has a route.ts file inside, any folder that has a route.ts file inside of it, that is inside of the app folder, would be a API route. So here I create one just as an example. In this case, I have this API folder inside of the app route, and this example folder inside of the API folder. Here you can see the path. So here's the route, app is the route, so that would be API/example. That would be the route. And if I send a post request to this thing, I would hit this endpoint. And this endpoint would call this function, and everything will happen from there. But because I'm using these functions inside of a project, that was not necessary to explicitly create these routes. What I did instead was to create server actions in my my project. So I'll take one of the routes. I'll take this payments route as an example, but all the other folders here were built with the same pattern. So basically, I have the page file that defines the route. So and when the user gets to this payments route, this page will render logic. It will check for the user. It has to be here. If it doesn't, it will be redirected to the signing. This is not necessary to put here this redirection because the middleware will take care of that. But just just to be safe, I did this again just in case of something happens. So this page call this function that will call the REPL transaction. So this get balance in this case is this function is a server action that is kind of working as an API, and it calls the REPL get transactions function, and it passes the values to this component that is also defined inside of the same folder. This component is a form. I'll talk more about it in the next video, and this form will eventually call this other function on submit that is defined here in this action.ts. The same way, this is a server action that will do some logic, and then we'll call directly the REPL functions and create two different transactions. So this function here, this submit function inside of this action.ts file, is also acting like an API, but that is not explicitly defined. I could, obviously, if, for example, I want to create a if I want to create a webhook, for example, I could have created an endpoint for that. But because I don't have the intention to expose any endpoints to users, I decide to take this approach. That is recommended by the next documentation, by the way.